time has come, the Walrus said, to talk of many things. In this particular case, it's going to be continuing to paint this Ogre. I don't know if you can see him very well, but we've got really, really nice transitions and really nice shadows going down. Same thing on the face. And hopefully today we'll be continuing in that particular fashion. Anyways, what I have here to show you is the colors we're going to be working with for this particular piece. And while that's not full, I have another. Forgive me, but the camera's right in front of me, and so is all my other stuff. Anyways, this is going to be our next shadow. And on top of that, we also have stuff for our highlights as well. So, got all our colors in here for our skin, basically. What I'm going to be doing next is going to be secondary shadows. So, hitting the really deep crevices. If you remember last time, what we had was 2 parts terracotta to 1 part dwarf skin. And we're just going to continue that, basically. Except we are going to be adding to the mix an additional part Imperial Blue. Now the reason we do this is we're just going to be doing it to add a little bit of color to the shadows. Instead of just going straight terracotta. No, I'm not saying you can't do straight terracotta. This is a personal and, in some people's opinions, professional preference. What I'm doing right here. You, by all means, could just do straight terracotta if you so did choose to. Or dark skin tone, or whatever you want. There's plenty of options as to what you can do. Now, the reason I'm not going with a purple, though, is because a purple is not far enough away from a terracotta for me to be satisfied with it. The Imperial Blue, however, is going to perform magnificently. And I'm mixing it three parts water to 1 part paint in this particular mix. Let's get that mixed up. It's really kind of dark, almost purplish tone to it. It's really interesting looking, having this paint mixed up this way. Anyways, all we're simply doing is taking it and applying it to the darker places where we want more shadow to be. In this particular case, shadows in there, shadow up, and the armpit. And all you're doing is basically putting shadows, just basically deeper shadows. Just putting it on the undersides and in the deepest crevices. If you want some sort of qualifier, you can say is, just like the last step, just more towards the bottom. So wherever you have shadows, just make them a little deeper where they need to be deeper. You're going to be doing this for several layers, basically everywhere. Partly because we want the transition to be really smooth. And that's why we have the paint so thin. Paint wasn't so thin. I just tell you to paint in the recesses at the best of your ability. We're fortunate enough to be able to work with. I'm fortunate enough to be able to work with really thin down paint. I personally just thinned this down this particular time with water. You don't have to use just water. You don't have to use water. You can use any sort of thinning medium. Works just as well. There's actually no particular reason why I used water. I just did. I felt like it today. I always go with what I feel like. Painting to how you feel is the best way to express your artistic qualities. Trying our best to make sure this doesn't act like a wash and acts like paint, which is a risk you take when you thin it down. This is just a very simple. This actually going to be a quick step because we don't need to do too much with this color in order for it to have done what we were planning on doing with it. The terracotta for the last shadow, for the most part, accomplished most of what we wanted as far as shadows go. We're actually going to be concentrating a lot more on the highlight with this particular model. Ogres tend to not, for whatever reason, they don't tend to paint ogres with really dark skin. And if you don't know already, I've actually probably already gone far darker than what normally would be done in the shadows. So I'm just going to paint it with higher contrast in mind and hope that works out better that way. I hope it works out for the better. Doing this just in the shadows, though, just adds a little bit of interest and a little bit of depth. Do this on the bottom of his face. Just pull down. Pull down. Underneath his nose a little bit. Up in those crevices. Down in there. Tap in there. Start hitting down here. there's a certain point where maybe you're thinking, oh man, I may have made my paint too thin. I'm starting to think that actually a little bit. But it's okay. I'm not too concerned with it. It's not going to hurt the actual appearance that much. Plus, this is all leading up to the next step anyways, which is going to be highlights. So, since I've got your attention basically right this second, I guess we're going to be asking some more questions. What has everyone's mind been on lately? Personally, Binding of Isaac. I've been playing a lot, and I've been watching the Crumps boiler races. And if you don't know what they are, don't worry about it. Basically, people with a particular goal in mind play a game called Binding of Isaac with the plan of reaching a certain point in the game. I've been playing a lot of the game myself, and I have to say, the fact that anyone can do that astounds me. The people can just race that game, or any game for that matter, astounds me. The thing about some of these shadows I'm putting in is most of them are not going to be very noticeable, so a lot of what I'm doing is actually going to be considered pointless in some people's eyes. I don't blame them. But on the other hand, though, they're basically done. Basically done. Which means we can move on to next step. What I'm doing now is I'm doing a cleanup step, and I'm taking just some dwarf flesh, and I'm going to be going over spots that we need to be more dwarf fleshy. And in the meantime, and an added bonus, it's going to help blend our colors a little bit better. Make those transitions pop a bit more. And I do apologize if you can't always see what I'm doing. It's really hard to work with a camera in your face. Literally. So I'm trying my best to do it so I'm doing a decent job, and you're able to see me doing a decent job. You catch my drift. I don't want to have really poor quality paint job just because I can't see what I'm doing, basically, is what I'm trying to get at. Fortunately, I made a really dark spot in a couple places accidentally. Trying to work at eliminating those without too many issues anywhere else. And unfortunately, it's kind of one of the downsides to painting like this. There's a lot of back and forth that you gotta work at. And it takes a lot of time to do all of that. And sometimes it takes more than just time. It takes patience. Honestly, if you don't have the patience to sit through me doing this, you don't have the patience to, probably don't have the patience to do it yourself. Well, that's not necessarily true. I personally, if I didn't think I could sit through myself, I've sat through people doing this sort of thing before. I've watched plenty of people paint. And if I couldn't have done that, though, if I was incapable of watching other people paint, I don't think I could do this. Not to the degree I do it, at least. Sometimes when you're doing this, you're just like, man, I feel like I'm hitting spots no one's ever going to see anyways. And sometimes you are. And it sucks. And the face is actually basically alright. It's more or less these spots I got accidentally hit with the really, really dark color that I really need to clean up. By the way, one of the tricks to being able to do this with really, really thin paint and not have it be a complete mess or a wash, have it work like a wash. And the biggest, honestly, to me, the biggest piece of it is making sure you have very little paint on your brush. Less paint you have in your brush. Don't make sure you don't have no paint on your brush, but the less paint you have on your brush, the more control you have over it when it's this thin. Also doing this though, I'm also running into the problem where it's so thin, covering up mistakes is getting hard. Especially how dark this color is and how opaque this flesh is. It's okay though. We are not done with this by a long shot. After all, I've only been working on the flesh. Yeah. Speaking of which, I said I wanted to get the flesh done today, so just find another place on my wet palette for more flesh to be laid down. Lay down 1-to-1 mix of dwarf flesh and elf skin tone. Roughly 1-to-1. Then we're going to follow up some water, and I'm going to make it, once again, like all the other layers, a 3-to-1 mix. Water to paint. You can go thinner, you can go thicker. That is entirely up to you. The thinner you go, the greater the transitions, or the more subtle the transitions will be. And oppositely, the thicker you go, less the thicker you go with it, the more obvious is words don't form in my mouth very well. The thicker you go, the more obvious that the transitions are going to be. So if you want real subtle transitions, I think if you really want subtle transitions without having to do by many layers, for me, I think the magic number for me has got to be 3-to-1. Not for every color, obviously. Not every color acts the same. But at least for what I'm working with here, 3-to-1. There's something on the model that I didn't want on the model. There it is again. Get off. And honestly, you may not even be noticing it getting brighter. I can barely tell if it's getting brighter. I can tell it's getting slightly brighter. Make sure you're hitting every surface, too, that you want brighter. Don't leave something uncovered for any reason if you want it to have highlights on it. You hit everywhere that you want highlights. I have had a hair go wild on me. Fortunately, that makes the hair almost useless. It makes it harder to work with your brush. It would make this a heck of a lot more interesting. For me, at least. Having someone to talk to. So please, if you are aware that I am live streaming, and would like to talk to me, come check me out whenever I go live. It's a little sporadic at the moment, but that is going to change, hopefully, in the near future. Because I know it's really hard to convince people to come watch something when doesn't have a set schedule. And right now I don't have a set schedule in my life, so doing everything almost in my life, at least as of recently, has been come down to whatever I can fit in, wherever it can fit in. And hopefully I can bring the structure up to something more manageable. Only thing that worries me is that I am very soon going to consistently have a child in my life. And that complicates the matters. But then again, at the same time, having a child in your life kind of forces you to make some sort of structure. So I guess it can be a double-edged sword in there, in some sorts, as far as that's concerned. I'm fortunate enough where the child is not a newborn, so lucky enough there, I guess. Doesn't need constant attention, but still, I can't always have the child be in school. That's just unrealistic. Alright, these transitions are just subtle as all hell. sure I get the lip, because the lip doesn't have too much color on it at the moment. It's almost bare, actually. Needed to pay more attention to that, and I did not. And that is my bad. But oh well. Alright, this stray hair is not going to just sit still. Behave. The only thing you can do with a hair and a brush that refuses to behave is clip it, unfortunately. Because if you don't, all it's going to do is get in your way. I gotta get some more color on that. Second. There we go. Let's get color. Let's go color. Whenever you are satisfied with the amount of highlighting you've done, or dissatisfied as I'm slowly becoming, because I'm thinking these transitions are way too subtle to notice, I'm going to do my next step now. Actually, I'm going to add Elfic Flesh, which is this really, really pale color to the mix. Very pale. Making it even brighter than it was before. Meaning try my best to keep in focus. Really am. It's really hard to tell. Really hard to tell sometimes when you're just looking down at your whatever you're working on. If it's in focus on what you're actually working on. Or if it's not. I don't know if you can tell, but we were actually getting those transitions in there. We're actually getting that really bright color to show up. I know it might look a bit chalky, That's okay, because it's just kind of the way things work out when you're working with really thin down paints. Honestly, one of the hardest places to do highlights is actually surfaces that are rounded. It's when you're doing them like this. You kind of got to bring it all to the center of where you're working. And then leave the surface. I'm trying to make his knuckles a little bit brighter. Adding definition to those is really key. Because if you can add a little bit of definition to the knuckles, and I mean specifically the knuckles, these particular here, and I'm going to explain this to you. What you're doing then with the knuckles is you're making the skin look like it's pulled tightly across them. And by doing that, you achieve this really nice realistic look of actual flesh. Being pulled across this guy's knuckles. Just think about how that works. It works real nicely. I recommend trying it out too. Now, all techniques I'll ever teach you here can be adjusted for your own personal use, and you can do them however you want, and you can do with them however much or as little as you like. And take them as far as you want in your own painting projects. Because ultimately our goal here is to make every one of ourselves better painters. My goal here is to help you become a better painter, help you be more satisfied with paint jobs you do in the future. And while I know you're looking at this, if you're watching this, and saying, man, these are super advanced techniques, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do this. You know what? You don't have to start here. In fact, I recommend you don't. Don't start here. Look at some of my other videos. Look at my next live stream, which is going to be painting orc flesh quickly. What I'm doing there is I'm taking some techniques I would consider generally advanced techniques, and I'm simplifying them and reapplying them in a method that allows me to paint really decent looking tabletop quality orc flesh really quickly. It's coming down along real nicely. In fact, I would consider actually personally would consider the flesh in here almost completed. Because with anything that's artistic, nothing's ever perfect. Nothing is ever really perfect. We're just content with it. Because you can continue even after this point, sitting here, going back to other colors, making in-between mixes, and just spending hour after hour after hour perfecting and highlighting and trying to make everything look better and smoother, and you know what? You can do that as much as you want. Guess what? I'm gonna give you a little secret. That's what golden demon painters do. So what I'm doing right here is the same thing a lot of golden demon painters do. I'm just doing it at a much smaller capacity. But a lot of golden demon painters paint exactly like this. They take a model and they paint one color at a time. And they build up really light, really subtle layers. And they'll keep going back and forth, come back with different colors, alternative colors, hit it with those, change the way things look, keep working at it, adjusting it, till they're satisfied with what they've done. And I'm talking about dozens and dozens of hours. However, I've spent probably at least 2 hours, if not more, on just this guy's flesh alone, and there's a lot more to do. I do have to decide, though, what we're going to be doing next time. Ooh. Yeah. I think next time it's going to be weapons. Yeah. I hope you like how his flesh is turning out. I'm actually very happy with how his flesh is turning out. I actually, probably if it wasn't for the fact that I actually like it how it is, if I was going for really, really high quality, or like even like level 8, level 9 quality, I would probably go back and I'd probably hit it with another highlight color. I'd either add more elfic flesh or almost do more elfic flesh to the mix, or do pure elf skin tone mixed with or eliminate the dwarf skin from the mix altogether and do another highlight like that, or even possibly just really thin down really pure elfic flesh. However, the Ogre is coming along. His skin looks really nice. There's one spot right back here that I do have to clean up, which I will do off camera because why do I need to sit you through this and make you bored through that as well? Next time I live stream, which will probably be in the next couple days, you will be seeing this being done live. It's nothing hugely complicated. It's nothing hugely impressive, but it gets the job done. Anyways, have a wonderful night. See you later.